Hello and welcome to the Art of Abundance podcast and YouTube channel. I'm so very happy you're here, and I'm Lisa Peterson, your host. Today I'm super excited to introduce Michelle Berry Franco. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. We're going to have so much fun.
Yeah.
And Michelle is a person that we know each other from a networking group that we were both a part of last year, and she had sent me a copy of her book. And as soon as I started to read her book, a new book coming out just recently, Beyond Applause, I was like, okay, this is such a good book. I just want you to come on to the show, talk about the book, talk about what you're doing, how you got the experience to create such an interesting book. And really what's fascinating to me is you write and you teach people how to find and share their narrative for the benefit of others. And I think we're going to understand even more about what that means. But it's fascinating to me. I'd love it if you could talk just a little bit about your background, because I feel like it weaves so beautifully into the book, and I can understand even more of you as you share that. And we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm excited to get to talk about it. And this is my first time getting to do it sort of on video in this format, and it's fun to get to do it with you. So it's perfect. Let's see. I always sort of, how far back do I go? So I started speaking when I was in high school. I lost my brother to alcohol addiction when I was in high school. And I was just not sure what to do with this, situation. It was just a lot of emotion, overwhelming. And I went back to school and was just sort of like looking for a way to channel the energy. And I learned about Mothers Against Drunk Drivers at the school. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll join that, alcohol related. And so as part of Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, or the main thing we did as the students in the organization, is went around to classrooms and showed these gory car crash scenes and tried to convince our fellow classmates not to drink and drive. So I didn't go into speaking because I was excited to get in front of people or be in the spotlight. I don't love the spotlight. It's never been about the spotlight for me. It still isn't. So when I got into college, I joined the peer education program, and I toured the campus with a banana and a binder full of the many textures and flavors of condoms, because HIV and AIDS was such a, it was growing, and we were trying to learn how to protect ourselves. So I was doing these sort of meaty human things, or I was involved in these organizations that were doing that. And speaking just happened to be the way that we made a difference. I think looking back now, and the reason that it stuck with me, I wasn't thinking this then, but is I could see that we were able to make a big impact because we could touch a lot of people at once with the message, right? Mm-hmm. You can try to teach one individual person how to protect themselves from HIV. That matters too, but there's no more powerful way to serve a lot of people all at once than powerful speaking. Mm-hmm. And I think later, and all through so I volunteered in these kind of organizations throughout my life while I was doing lots of other things. But I also, somewhere along the way, I worked in insurance, I worked in high-tech startups, and a few different things happened. I was kind of trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? Not thinking anything like speaking coaching. And I was working at a high-tech company, and right at the dot-com era, brilliant people from, with amazing educations, great conversations around our desks. And then I would watch these same dynamic, really smart people walk to the front of the room and just morph into like a super professional presenter with their bullet points and their fancy language. And I'm like, what just happened there? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I had, I don't know, maybe it was like the year before that, met someone who was teaching communication classes at San Francisco State University. I'm like, that sounds super fun. How'd you get to do that? Oh, I got my master's degree. So I'm like, I'm going to do that. So I got my master's degree in speech communication because I wanted to teach communication classes. And that was at night while I was teaching during the day. And I mean, I'm sorry, while I was working in high tech during the day and watching this happen. So it's a bit of a long, but it was sort of this culmination of an accidental speaker since I was in high school, watching what was happening in the business world and really feeling such passion for our ability to serve with a message that changes people's lives. There's obviously a lot of pieces in there that got me to that place, but that is how I ended up here, is that this is the tool that I believe makes such a beautiful impact.
Yeah, it is powerful. Like, I think even for myself in high school, I was like the rally chair, and I got to get with that microphone up in front of the whole school from like the senior year and sort of orchestrate things. And for being an introverted person, like, it shocked me how much I wanted that job and embraced it and saw the power, even though I'm not really funny and I'm not all that entertaining, like I could make things come together and create a really good experience for people. So maybe it goes all the way back to high school for me too.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome. I'm an introvert too. There's just, the call is separate from introvert extrovert.
Totally. Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, it's not that I don't, get nervous or what have you, but the other thing that I think I've learned, and maybe we could talk about this, is the work that I do now is so around empathy and feeling. And I've always been very oriented to feeling rather than thinking. And so for many years in my professional career in banking and finance, it was all about thinking. And I could do that speaking, but I think that the speaking that I do now, which is very feeling based and very different, quite frankly, it affects people in a very, very different way than when, like you said, you've got those like bullet points and you're taking somebody through this kind of presentation, but there's not a lot of that emotional, intelligence as a part of it. And I'm just curious, like, when you teach people or you're helping people, is that a big part of what you're doing, is helping them notice the difference?
Yeah, I think helping them remember what they know about what works to touch other people, to get their attention, to keep their attention. I think we don't have good mentors or models for how to, even share I worked in insurance. I do training for large financial organizations. And this is a big part of what I help them come back to. Just because you're talking finances or, something else that's sort of like thought of as boring or dry, doesn't mean you can be that way about it. You can't. You actually won't get their attention. So then why talk at all? So the same things work in those environments. We think of them as two separate things. Like when we're in our business mode or we're working in finance or insurance or something, then we present like this. And that's true, actually, because that's what we're seeing. And then when we're coaches or we're in the wellness arena, or a lot of those places where my clients are too, then we can, bring in the emotion. The truth is we need both. We often need more of the data and research in our softer, more emotional talks. And we need more of those stories and things so we can captivate the brains and, the thinking part of the people in our audience.
Mm-hmm. And it's finding that right balance between the two. Something is coming to me that I just have to share with you. So you're familiar with Jeff Walker and this, like, Jeff Walker PLF launches. Yeah. Well, I'd gone to one of his conferences a year or two ago, and he was showing some of the most unique videos that people had done, and just how powerful. He was trying to inspire all of us to realize that we all have the ability to create these videos that could market our products and services to people. Yeah. And he pulled a video of a guy who was in the UK, and he was an accountant, and he had created a product that helped people digest tax code. And they showed the video of this guy literally reading through the tax code book. And it was so fascinating, because as I describe that, you're thinking that must have been horrifying.
Yeah,
but
I am.
Instead, he was so into what he was doing and trying to be helpful that you just felt how much he cared about this tax code and communicating the tax code to these accountants that were needing help. And he sold out his course. Like, I mean, he sold so many of them and it was so sincere. And I was just like, I still to this day, I'm like, it is so possible to like communicate dry stuff just by bringing your heart and soul into it. You can still be reading tax code and be deeply personable.
Yeah. And I think that there's another important piece to note about that story. And that is that he was helping accountants, right? So you enjoyed it because it was a cool example, right, of something, but you didn't really, I'm going to guess, didn't really like, you're like, great, I can't wait to go learn tax code, right?
Right.
But because his audience is accountants, that worked, because we have to have both, right? It's what is my message and who am I here to serve? And then how do I bring this magic mix of content, is what I call it, which is the, the research data part, the stories, the engagement for the audience, those three elements.
Wow. And that's what you're talking about. I mean, in your book, when you were pulling it together, how did you even know? Because I've been writing, like I told you offline for years, trying to put these different books together. Yeah. How did you know what was going to be the most powerful combination to include in this book to help people?
I didn't. So if I could give this to you as a gift as you're writing your book, I didn't know. I mean, it truly is. I heard someone say it, I think maybe you were there too, and I've said it probably 150 times since then to various people. Was it Charlie Gilkey who said it? I've heard other people say it since, so I think it's a thing, which is we often confuse lack of clarity for, we often think we aren't clear, when actually what we're looking for is certainty, and we don't get to have that. And so I think it's something about that just so, it's powerful. Like, oh, I better plan out this book. And I think the reason that it worked in my case is because I had to be done in 9 weeks. I had made a commitment to be done within 9 weeks. And if I didn't finish in 9 weeks, my book was not going to be read by this great editor. That was a choice I was making. I either finish it or I don't. And so I'm like, okay, then I better just write the book that comes to me first. Like, just go and do it. And I did. And then you have something to work with. So actually the book got twice as good after that. But that editor, who reads lots and lots of books, said, this is one of the top 10 books I've read.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like super amazed. Yeah. So and then cool. It got better from there, so.
Wow. Yeah. And you put this together. You were talking to me, and I'd love it if you could share. You had a time window. Did you plan out that you were going to go away or do some retreats or do a program to get it done in 9 weeks?
Yeah. So I had this book idea. I knew I wanted to write a book. I thought it was a good idea. I also had all these things I wanted to say, all of that. And so I'd been mulling it around, and then I learned about this. The Author Incubator is who I did the program through with Angela Lauria. And I watched one of her videos, had watched a few. It wasn't brand new to me at all. But for some reason on that day, maybe because it was my birthday, whatever, I'm like, I just don't want to mess around with this anymore. Like, I can go write this book on my own. I can. But there was something about that, having that time frame. So once I made that decision, and I think you can make it lots of different ways. So you might decide to do it in a program. You might just decide you're going to honor your commitment, or whatever. Then we said, okay, when is my first writing retreat? That's just how I work. I know that I'm going to get this written mostly by going away from my family and zoning in on it. So I probably went on 5 or 6 of those.
Wow. Over that period, which is a really short period of time. So, yeah. And
yeah.
How did you know it was done?
'Cause it was due.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, and again, if you have an editor lined up and they've signed, if they've arranged, I think there are ways you can create this for yourself too, right? Or you can do a program like the one I did. But even if you go try to get a really great editor, they slot you in. You either hit that or you don't. And if you don't, then you're going to have to get in line behind someone else and your time gets messed up. So I think a lot of it was that. And also I had a deadline. And so having a deadline meant I had to reverse engineer. Okay, if I'm going to write this many words by this date, how much time do I have to allot to this? And I made it up. I was wrong. I was wrong about the time, I was wrong about a lot of things, but it allowed me to start and then just do it.
Yeah. And there's a workbook component to it where you've got people thinking about the exercises, like you're encouraging us to do the steps as we're moving through.
Yeah.
So that we're thinking about what it is that we want to communicate and how are we going to be able to communicate it. And I felt like that was very well planned on your part. And I could see how this book wasn't just something like we spoke about that you have to use just for speaking. You could use this for organizing a course. You could use it for organizing a presentation of some sort, or all kinds of things. It's just you've got something you want to communicate. How are you going to go about doing that in the most effective way possible?
Yeah, I would say that that's absolutely true, that this book really, it's the path to thought leadership is what it's based on.
Mm-hmm.
And we can call it that. We can call it lots of different things. But what it does is the three elements are: take a stand for something that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And my guidance is the stand that your heart and soul is called to take. So, get on the rooftop. I have this whole rooftop process that people find really, really honing for them.
Mm-hmm.
What would you want to shout from a rooftop in this scenario? And I talk all that through in there. And then, my goal is that you walk away from this book really like feeling like if you've done the exercises, you really are ready to go offer up to speak somewhere. Mm-hmm. Because you're crystal clear on the stand that you take that matters. Then you commit to serve through that stand. Who do you need to be so that you can take that stand with conviction and confidence and power? And so there's a little bit of who do you need to be? And then what do you need to do? How do you craft a great talk? The magic mix of content. So it's not so much a book that tells you exactly how to craft a great talk. I've written one of those. Other people have written those kinds of books. They're awesome. Actually, the resources page has all the stuff you need to go craft a talk. Mm-hmm. But it's really designed for you to get crystal clear on that message, become the person who can deliver that message, and the tools in there guide you through that. And then go where they gather and serve, which is the third step on the path to thought leadership. Where are these people that you are now committed to serving? And how do you go offer up to serve them? As a speaker, yes, might be as a writer, might be writing articles and publishing in industry magazines. It might be serving on their committees.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about pricing. I was looking through the book right now because I remember there was something that you shared, a story, like after you had maybe saw someone about pricing for what you asked for speaking. Is this like,
so there's a story about Chris Brogan?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Chris Brogan. Yeah, and I interviewed him for a previous book that I wrote that's really about how to craft a talk. It's called Soul Power to Your Message. And it's really a guide. I mean, it's kind of a little bit, it's more workbooky. But in that book, for that book, I'd interviewed Chris Brogan, and I said, just how did you do it? How did you become, a highly paid speaker? Basically, in a series of questions. And he said, so I was making like $2,500 a talk. And then I was at a conference behind the scenes, and Guy Kawasaki, do you know who, the Guy Kawasaki who knows all about pitches and presentations, was walking past him, and he said, hey, I just gave your name to, a company that wants a speaker, charge him a lot of money. And he says, well, what does charge him a lot of money mean? And Guy says, charge him $25,000. So literally, Chris Brogan, because someone who he, thought was expert enough or whatever, that is how crazy our minds are, right? In one moment, you think I can only charge $2,500. And a moment later, you're like, oh, maybe I can charge 25,000. And I think he said he charged 22,000.
Yeah.
He's like, now I charge 25, but I just,
Oh, that's such a great, like you're intermixing these stories of yours, your experience with your clients, being out
yeah,
there and speaking and
right.
seeing. And I love those examples because you realize that obviously Guy had a lot of respect for Chris. He knew that
Yeah.
he was capable of commanding that, but we never know when we're out there shining our light because we are doing the work. We are looking at how to communicate more effectively. And then these really cool, like, oh my gosh, I just times 10'd my fee.
Yeah. Yes. And I would say the reason that happened, aside from that Guy probably knew Chris enough, and, he's not going to recommend him to someone if he
Right.
doesn't respect him, just as you just said. But this is the problem that most speakers have, or aspiring speakers, people who want to speak on better and better stages. Nobody knows what to bring them on the stage for. So they think they're clear on their message. That's why I wrote this book. They think they're clear on their message because they talk about nutrition, or because they talk about entrepreneurship, and because, so that they've been asked by 4 different conferences, if they're lucky, over the last year with 4 different topic ideas. And they've said yes to all those topic ideas. When you go through the process in this book, you decide the stand you take. Then when Guy Kawasaki walks by you, he knows exactly when to say to you, I have the perfect person for you. I know they're going to pay you 25,000 because you speak on, in a
Right.
compelling, powerful way, exactly what they need
Mm-hmm.
and want.
And do you think, how does your book help your business on that point? Because I'm thinking part of the reason I've been so focused on writing books is because it allows you to take a stand
Yeah.
for what you believe in. It's true. You're not going to have the certainty. I really needed to hear that today. So as I'm writing, because I get to these points and I'm like, this is coming from me. There's no way that I can do anything but just say this is what I believe, right?
Yes,
That's not
that's
my
right.
definition of certainty. Just saying. But
Yeah.
as I totally lose my train of thought, but you get the idea of what's going on here. Like, how can we do this better, take a stand, be really, really clear with our marketplace about what we are here for, why we've built our businesses. It has evolved a lot for me over 3.5 years. It probably does that for a lot of us. But this book, how does this book help you in doing what you're doing?
Yeah. It's been pretty awesome and exciting to me. I would have to say I didn't know exactly what would happen. I knew what I had heard other people say about having written. I've written other books, never quite this much like a real book. I don't know how to explain that, but the other ones have been a little more workbooky, and I didn't really talk about them very much, which is a whole nother conversation we could have. I'm definitely talking about this one, but it gives people a really. I didn't realize how much people didn't know about how much I knew. Mm-hmm. So the overwhelming response has been, wow, Michelle, holy crap, you really know what you're talking about. I'm like, maybe I don't seem like I know I probably just don't talk about it enough, right? So literally I had one friend, it was a friend of mine, say to me, she said, I'm trying to think I remember her saying it. I can't remember who it was because I think I've heard variations on this. But she said, look, I was going to buy your book anyway. Of course I was. I love you. But then I opened your book and I read it and I was like, holy, this is so good. She said this to me like 3 times and I really was like, what did you expect? So to your question, I have been surprised by how much it has really underscored my credibility. I feel I had pretty good credibility already in my small circles, but it seems to have underscored it substantially. And people are sharing it with other people. It's very easy to share a book, right? So I'm hearing about that a lot. So and so gave me your book, sent your book to me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and do you use it as a way to bring people into the work you do? I mean, obviously it's great because the
Yeah.
book is complete. I feel like
Yeah.
people could use the book and they don't need to do anything more. But there are going to be many professionals that are like, I am at this point where if I don't figure this out, I'm losing money on a daily
Yes.
basis. Like, let's
Yeah.
just take them, for example. Has that already started to happen where people are like, oh my gosh, I need you because of
Yes, definitely. That has definitely started to happen. I mean, the book hasn't been out very long.
I
And
know.
I definitely, so I would say in most cases, we're still in conversation. So, I don't have, my group program starts in April. So April 9th is when the group program starts. Right now, the only way to work with me is one-on-one. And it is an investment. So the conversation is longer, right? And
Yeah.
for some people, that's just not a way that they're going to invest, which is why I'm doing the group program. And I know it'll be awesome for them. And I can't wait to be able to say, look, you can do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. It's exciting.
It is
Do it.
exciting. I know, exactly. And I mean, I have a lot of entrepreneurs, right, who watch my show, who listen to the podcast, and I think it's really inspiring because we can build our business in many different ways, reputation
Yeah.
and a book or a podcast or what have you. But I think of all the things out there, my impression is that the book is a really cool tool because
Mhm.
it's so low cost. And for those that are eager for
Yeah.
your message, they can get in, they can find out what you're doing, they can
Mhm.
see if you're going to help them, and then they can make that decision if they want to do more with you or just use the book as the guide. And
Yeah.
it's like you can touch, thousands or millions of people through a book. How cool is that?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, so for me, so the divine combo, if you ask me, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, is speaking and a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because they get a taste of you, they get a sense, you get some of that, and of course in the book, like you spoke to that a little bit too, just sort of like hearing the voice of the person. But if you can stand in front of a room, share the message, and then have a book for them to kind of take with them and get even more connected, it's a pretty awesome combo. And that's the part I'm also looking forward to exploring more for myself. So I have speaking gigs coming up. In fact, having a book is a great way to get people to invite you on their podcast. I've had multiple people almost immediately say, come on my podcast, let's talk about it. Hey, we have an event coming up in whatever September, and I'd love to have you speak. But these kinds of things just help them reduce uncertainty, because uncertainty does matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a great speaker, you reduce the uncertainty of the people in the room around what it's like to work with you. When you write a book, you reduce uncertainty around your expertise.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I have one last question, if you have time, just
Yeah.
to something. I was at a conference, I guess it was last year, and the speaker never got on the stage. Like, he stayed in amongst, there's about 3,000 or 4,000 people,
Yeah.
and he was storytelling and really engaging the audience in a conversation, which I really, really enjoyed. Like, I noticed how we each have different things. Like, he just wasn't the person. He doesn't command that kind of presence on the stage. Like, I don't think he would have given the same touching talk that stuck with me all this time getting on the stage. And I'm just curious, like, maybe to talk about the fact that as you take a stand, you
Mhm.
can perhaps command more of creating the environments
Yeah.
that are best for you as a speaker, as
Mhm.
opposed to just doing the same thing that everybody is kind of thinking that you're going to have to do. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
Yes. That is so, your voice, your style is the very best style for you to be even more of. So I have this process I take clients through that's called the expression elan. And I talk a little bit about it in the book, but it's a full process. So it's, it'd be another book, but it is basically the process of, it's sort of like a branding process, I guess. It's the process of naming your style and then putting language around. And my clients love this because it's permission to be even more of who you naturally are. So much of what gets in the way of us making a powerful impact as speakers as people, but as speakers, is the anxiety we get. Some of us are aware of it and some of us call it other things like procrastination or I'm too busy, but it's usually just sort of this anxiety. And a lot of that can come from trying to be someone that you're not. So when you can label yourself really like, who am I when I'm at my very, very best? And that's part of how we do this process. And then put some words to it and then step into it more. Wear those colors, use those phrases, play that music when you walk in, sit in a circle with your people. If that's the way you bring your best self, you always do need to, once you have that as a baseline and you know that really well, it is important to ask yourself things like, what time of day is it? What's the audience experiencing at this time of day? Right? If it's 3 o'clock and you're going to play quiet music and sit on the floor with them, you might have some trouble. So how do you honor who you are, right? And who they are and what they probably need given their experience.
Yeah, I heard Danielle Laporte talk the other day with this interview, and it was so cool because she was like, a lot of times she felt like she was the token woman at these like big conferences. She comes in and you'll have these guys that are like really loud music and jumping and kind of like Tony Robbins style and revving them up. And she's like, that is not me. Like I come out there and I am like, hey, you know, like there's no music. I'm like there. And she's so comfortable in her own skin about like, I don't care what they're doing. I'm me and I'm going to be me. And that's who you're getting. And yes, I make them laugh and they're, you know, there are all kinds of parts of me, but that's not what I'm coming out there to do. And I was like, oh, I love hearing these stories of just have it be you and don't feel that pressure to be somebody other than you are.
Yeah. It's just so absolutely true. And it's a matter of using some good anxiety reduction tools and knowing who you are. And then yes, all the yes to that.
Yay. Yeah. So, okay, tell us about the book and then where they can find you if they want to learn more. Just tell us.
So the book, I have it right here.
Yay.
Beyond Applause. Which you can find on Amazon and on my website. If you know, there's just a little bit more about it on the book. I'm at michelleberryfranco.com.
Yeah, and we'll give them some notes because we might have a freebie or something that they can get on the show notes, right?
Yes, that's true. In fact, I do have so the biggest question that I get asked actually, and this is really what the book addresses, isn't how do I craft an awesome talk, though people want to know that. It's how do I get great speaking gigs? That's the question. That's the question that this book answers. And I have a 3-part process, a 3-part video series that will take them through really elements in the book, but in a different way that kind of walk them through it. So I'll share that with you so you can put them in the show notes if they'd like the video version.
Awesome. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much
Thank you
for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.